literally just pulled this out from random. So
I'm Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, joined by my buddy Gordon Dymowski, my buddy Patrick McCray. We're picking episodes at random for Dark Shadows. We're here to do episode 873, chosen by Gordon. Gordon, why did you pick this episode, buddy?
I think I'm on the wrong podcast. This isn't If Books Could Kill, is it?
No.
Yes, there is a book called If Books Could Kill, Patrick.
I believe you.
But no, the reason I chose it, basically, it's the one where I did eeny, meeny, miny, and that's where the Mo landed. And you should always land on Mo and never Larry or Curly, especially not Chimp, and especially not Joe Besser, because Joe Besser is the stooge that nobody likes.
Where do you stand on the issue of Curly Joe Dorita?
I think Curly Joe is he's not bad, but what they were looking to do is they needed a third. I think he fit them in their later years because where they came, they were a lot less like physical. They weren't doing the shorts. They were more verbal and slapsticky, and he came from vaudeville, and burlesque, so he kind of fit with them. Like Joe Besser, no. And we will get to Dark Shadows in a moment, folks. Don't worry. But we like to go on these tangents, and then we'll come back. Like I said on Twitter, I'm not sober. But no, I chose this episode for a couple of reasons. One, I think doing one that it's late in the 1897 arc, and I think 1897, it's where it's the longest arc of the entire series. But I think I kind of get the sense that this was where the writers, after they started doing we've explained Quentin, we've done a little where we've revisited the Laura storyline. I think they just said, you know what? We're in 1897. Nobody's, Dan's not on our backs. Let's just rock out. I mean, this episode has two actors playing each other's roles. It's got a great confrontation with Barnabas. It's got a trippy psychedelic music video thing, and I highly suggest dropping acid before watching this episode. And it does several revelations, especially with the end, which I thought was just simply brilliant.
Gordon, what did you think of this episode?
I thought it was very good.
I'm sure about it.
Or Patrick, sir.
Now, Gordon, we've had your take. Now I need your take.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all right. You got me off.
Okay, before we continue, Jewel. First, I like the episode, and Jewel, we established very early on. Two of us need to be sober. I'm the drunk one. What were you doing before the podcast, Jewel? Because I just told Patrick asked, what do you think of episode 873? I said it, and then you say, hey, Gordon, what do you think of the episode? And you need to keep in mind, okay, Patrick and I are two different people. You know how you can tell the difference? Patrick has a beard.
It's true. I'm from the mirror universe.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, what did you think?
Honey, do I need to take you to get your eyes checked again?
No.
Okay.
He only has them for you.
Right? Well, we need to get these glasses checked then.
True.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Go ahead, Patrick. That's what they will say. Well, gosh. I think this is a marvelous episode. I think it's got nothing but plot and a music video, which, the record was selling really well. And so, they wanted to get a little bit more in there. And so, they managed to do that. And I think they did it absolutely brilliantly. For me, Tom Patovi's getting that close. Of course, someone's going to mess it up, of course. And, and Beth is, she's reliably on the scene to make that happen. But the real star of this episode, after all is said and done, is the props department, of course. No, it's the confrontation that Petofi and Barnabas have, where everyone kind of gets a little outed, but they can't do anything about it, and Barnabas really has the upper hand, or is that Quentin who has the upper hand, which is another great sort of turnabout that we weren't necessarily expecting. I love that scene with Barnabas and Petofi, especially because it's fun to wonder at what point did Barnabas know this or that about Petofi, and at one point did Petofi know this or that about Barnabas.
Yeah, and I also loved how because I think Sam Hall wrote this episode.
Yeah, he did.
And I like how he did the reversal of David Selby as Petofi captures the voice rhythms, vocal rhythms beautifully, and he's doing the hand thing, and he's all malevolent, and he touches Barnabas, and Barnabas is like, okay, yeah, whatever, dude, yeah, you're a little too friendly, back off.
Yeah.
And Quentin is basically just, okay, he's talking to Kitty Soames, who says, oh, okay, yeah, you're gonna realize the truth about yourself, only about yourself, don't worry about it. And it works.
Yeah. Brilliantly.
There's a lot of good stuff in this episode. I really like you guys said the music video. They did this musical number prior for the werewolf curse. They're doing it now to reveal that Count Petofi is in Quentin's body to Pansy Faye here, and Nancy Barrett, who also narrated this episode. So they're giving Nancy Barrett a lot to do in this episode, which I like. We also get Catherine Lee Scott in this episode as Kitty Soames, who really interesting how Kitty Soames has had prior experience with Count Petofi. Though it is Quentin and Petofi's body, she feels she's more talking to Petofi. She thinks she's talking to the real Petofi. She's not. And this is where also by the end of the episode, you sort of have the switcheroo with the hand. The hand's powers goes back into the original hand. Therefore, Quentin, who is in Petofi's body, has the power of the hand now, which is a neat little trick. I like that Sam Hall, the way he wrote it. I tell you, the two people to me who steal this episode are Nancy Barrett and Catherine Lee Scott. I just really enjoy how though the men sort of are dominating this episode really heavily to me with Barnabas and Quentin, they're more but I give credit to Beth, to Nancy Barrett, and to Catherine Lee Scott. Beth Chavez, though you're right. Beth Chavez is the one who messes up the time travel for Count Petofi, or Quentin, Count Petofi. And, she knocks each, she goes, the portrait is gone, your portrait is gone. And he automatically, he thinks that Pansy took it, or that he distracted him, and then Barnabas took it. So he's accusing people. We're going to come to find out later in the episodes that it was Charles Delaware Tate who took it. And hey, why not the very man who painted the portrait? So
exactly.
I know it doesn't happen in this episode, but what did you guys think of that later reveal that Charles Delaware Tate is and he's using it to, for those who don't know, he's using it to bargain with Petofi. What did you guys think of that strategy by Charles Delaware Tate? It's a bold move to make.
It was a bold move. I enjoy all of the gamesmanship going on here. What do you think,
Gordon?
Oh, I thought he was talking to you. I think it's one of the cool things about 1897 is that most of the other Dark Shadows plots, most of the plotting it's driven by one character. Like you've got 1795, it's Angelique is doing most of the conniving and scheming, and everyone's kind of like falling into other realms. you've got this kind of great sense of different characters have different ideals and are moving forward. So it seems like this is probably the if you were to choose one era of the Collins family on TV that you would definitely not want to be part of.
Gosh, there's so many choices.
Yeah. This probably would be this is one where you'd probably want to just sit and observe and munch popcorn because there's so much drama going on. But I think it's because I think at this point I could see where the writers, maybe it was just a sense of the world outside is a garbage fire. 1969 was not a banner year for like cultural positivity.
No, it wasn't.
They were also probably just like, hey, we're here. We've got all these great story ideas. Why not? And I think part of that arose. I think a lot of that feel of the nice plot and the gamesmanship comes from, okay, we could really lean in and do all this. I mean, it would be interesting to jump into the Band of Parallel Time where Dark Shadows turned into the 1897 show.
Yeah.
Also, I think too, here's why I love this strategy by Tate. Because as we're going to come to find out too, now I want to be clear, we don't know that Tate has it in this episode. That's not revealed in this episode. So I want to be clear. We find out later on in other episodes. So, but when we find that out, Tate's strategy is to sort of get in goods with Patofe. Well, Quentin and Patofe switch bodies back. Because with Quentin having the power of the hand, he gets his body back. And he doesn't want to fall asleep because he doesn't want to lose his body again. Now, we come to find out, we see Charles Delaware Tate painting the canvas completely white. And he's going to paint another painting over it, which is genius. And now, not in the same episode, but he is going to eventually, we're going to find out during the Leviathan arc, that he paints another painting over it. And I really like the strategy because, number one, he's a great painter. I love how they establish he's a good painter. Patofe's going to give him his powers back without Tate telling him he has Quentin's portrait. That is pure gamesmanship. If you can get something over somebody who's a complete heel, who's a worser heel than what you are, that is just smart character building by the writers.
It is.
Mm-hmm. It's pure genius. And though it doesn't happen in this episode, I really love that it happens because it's so cool. It gives sort of Charles Delaware Tate the ultimate trump card to have in his sleeve. Hey, Quentin's portrait is somewhere, but I'm the one who knows where it is. Mm-hmm. And at any time, I could destroy that portrait. Like if they would have played this during for the Leviathan arc, if like Patofe shows up and he says, "Oh, Charles, I can make I'm glad you're alive," and Charles is like, "I got something to tell you. I know where Quentin's portrait is." And at any time I can destroy that thing. And what's Patofe gonna do?
Yeah, but then Charles Delaware Tate had to paint that painting of Amanda Harris. He had to get obsessed with her. But I also think too, in this episode, in episode 873, there are a couple of little touches. One I think is quite brilliant, and the other, in retrospect, feels a little creepy. The one that I'll go with the creepy one, which is where Barnabas is telling Kitty Soames that he's in love with Joseph Dupre, and then excuses it by saying, "Oh, well, I saw her portrait when I was a little boy, and I fell in love with her, and I learned all about her." Like, I understand that he's a man out of time, even in 1897. There's probably a better way to do that, but I'm not going to be pedantic. But at the end, when Kitty is revealed, she realizes she's
mages.
Nothing. It's an accident. Continue.
When she reveals that she is, she says, "I am Josette Dupre, and I'm Kitty Soames. Not I was Josette Dupre, but I'm Kitty Soames, because she realizes she's the reincarnation of Josette. And Barnabas even says you need to let her in, which I thought was kind of interesting. It's the idea of reincarnation not as a soul in a different body, but as a body being receptive for the soul. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Do you think that they should have maybe played it out a little longer, or no?
No, because I think at this point they were probably. The problem with playing certain things out longer is that you end up with. You never quite is that you tend to do a lot of spinning, wheel spinning, like with the Dream Curse arc. It's by its nature, it's one of those you have the dream. You can't tell anybody, but you agonize over it until you tell somebody, and then you tell somebody. And that could have gone on forever until Stokes, decides, oh, screw it, I'm not going to comply with this. This is BS. I also think that because we've already seen that story with Maggie Evans, and we've seen it somewhat with Josette, I think making it very subtle that this may not just necessarily be a old soul in a new body, but that somehow there's a struggle between. It opens up a duality because it's no longer just, oh, I'm Josette. I used to be Josette Dupre, but now I'm this. I think there's an interesting, on a metaphysical level, it's kind of interesting. It's one that's it's one where the fanfic writers can go crazy with it. But I think trying to extend it longer than it actually would be, I think would feel like, okay, yeah, we're doing the Josette story again. And if there's one thing about 1897 that even redoing the Laura story, they recontextualize it so that it's less this oddball little pre-Barnabas thing in the 60s. It feels like a recurring threat for the Collins family because she shows up in 1897 and Barnabas says, oh, hey, she was married to Jeremiah for a while. So there's this sense of Dark Shadows is really good at building this kind of history, at building a kind of it's the history in a suggested history. It's like, a couple episodes ago you did the widows of Widow's Hill. Early on, yeah, you want to do the details for that because it's like local folklore. But the great thing is, you just say Widow's Hill, you know what the place is, even if you've never seen the pre-Barnabas stuff. And I think 1897 is where they start to really kind of take and build out that sense of history, as well as really provide a sense of Collinwood becomes a place that's really been lived in, if you catch my meaning. And I think the whole Kitty Soames Josette thing adds an interesting wrinkle to it.
Patrick, what did you think?
What I wonder is, does Barnabas think this is going to be the last time he's going to have to do this Josette thing?
Yeah.
That's my biggest question. Is this the last time for him?
Now, here's my question. Did they know by this time they were going to do the Leviathan arc?
That's a really interesting question.
What episode starts the Leviathan arc?
Oh, it's not
unofficially.
It's gosh. Oh boy. The Leviathan arc starts probably in the probably around 900, I would say.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess. Let's see. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. So, it starts out before 900. It starts out in the late 800s. I mean, we don't have that much further to go.
Yeah, they may not have thought Leviathan, but they probably were thinking, okay, at some point we need to consider an endpoint, and what are we going to launch with? Because it would make sense that if the writers were thinking, and maybe in the back of their minds they were thinking, okay, with this arc, we're going to resolve this Barnabas Josette thing once and for all. And then as they're finishing up, it's like Dan says, hey, look, Lovecraft, let's do this. And they're like, oh, crap, what do we do? Oh, okay, we'll just have Josette being held captive by the Leviathans in the 1790s. Because I think at some point after, I'm not sure if it's during or after, where Josette kind of says to Barnabas, hey, dude, chill. I'm just not that into you.
I have a theory. This is just a total fan theory, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But I think what Oberon and Haza did is that they got in some sort of wormhole alien-like sequence with Barnabas, I think they probably gave him a choice, about all of the Josette stuff that was coming down and what he could do about it. And he probably said, okay, I'll go along with you, but I don't know how I'll keep from fighting it. And they said, as long as you're willing right now, that's all that matters. And they mind wipe him a little bit. And it takes a while for him to kind of restore that. That's my armchair theory.
Now, Kitty Soames gets pulled into the portrait of Josette, right?
She does.
Okay, this is episode 873. I checked. The Leviathan arc starts episode 886. That's not that far away.
Right.
So, if that's my thing, if Kitty Soames, which I have to believe, again, I'm freestyling here, I have to believe that Kitty Soames, the character of Kitty Soames, Josette, reincarnation of Josette, that they know that they're going to use this as a plot point, but at least close to this time for the Leviathan arc. At least they're thinking, if they haven't thought about it, they're at least have decided it, because by the end, Kitty Soames gets pulled in, and Kitty / Josette. And what do the Leviathans threaten? What are they threatening Barnabas with? Oh, we have the ghost of Josette prisoner. Great plot, if you can have a ghost prisoner, if you're ghost busted, like if you're sort of ghost busting in a way and holding a ghost from like either haunting or just moving on, that's a bit creepy of a power. I mean, that's sort of why you buy the Leviathan half-her, because she is just pulled back and then you never see her. And it's like, well, do they have her? Why not? I mean, they time travel. So that's why I asked that. It's really, I find it interesting that they're, again, I like the character of Katie Sims. I like what they do with her as the reincarnation of Josette, because they're going back to Josette and Barnabas. And the one thing I found odd, we don't really get anything from Angelique until Barnabas goes back in time again, which is, because here's the thing. They mention Angelique, I believe, in this episode, or at least, that's the thing. It's like, okay, if Katie Sims, because Katie Sims made the comment that when she saw Angelique, she was shocked that she knew her. Okay, I'm sure Angelique knows what Josette looks like. It's like that's what I was most shocked by. We don't get anything from out of Angelique about Katie Soames until they go back in time again, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do have a theory about the nature of time travel in Dark Shadows and how people perceive each other.
Yeah.
Which is that when you go in Dark Shadows terms, when you go back in time, your brain automatically kind of adjusts to what people look like to what you're familiar with. So remember way back in 1795, Victi shows up. She's like, oh, wait. Hi, Roger. Oh, no, I'm Joshua.
Yeah.
Oh, Judith. Oh, no, I'm Naomi.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, you're Matthew Morgan. No, I'm Ben Stokes. So I think for it's like Barnabas right now, like Quentin's probably the only person he sure doesn't look like his father. So, right. By that token, and it has to be mystical time travel. So like for Barnabas, Roger does not look like Joshua. Roger looks like a different person. For us, it's easier because from a storytelling, from a production standpoint, you don't want to be hiring new actors all the time. So that's why you had Louis Edmonds usually play the patriarch. To use Patrick's theory that, you've got these archetypes of characters, and that each character of these archetypes have a different set of experiences. So I think that for people traveling in time, it's just a weird psychological quirk. It's like you run into someone, hey, you look like my grandpa. They have nothing to do with your grandpa, may not be related, but you look like my grandpa.
That makes as much sense as any. And we have a weird choice here because Vicky recognizes it and no one subsequently does.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a little bit of a challenge there. So, where do you lean on that?
I think the thing with that is, though, too, there's a difference between Victoria Winter's time travel and Barnabas Collins' time travel.
Okay.
Victoria Winters is reliant a bit on the Collins family history book. She thinks it's accurate. She's wrong. It's not entirely wrong, but it's not 1,000% accurate either. Barnabas, now there's more to her too with that, and I'll finish hers before I jump on to Barnabas. So she's relying on the book, and she's sort of Dorothy. It's a Wizard of Oz effect, where she's looking at everybody and call it, like Gordon said, Roger. No, it's not Roger, it's Joshua. Naomi or Elizabeth. No, it's Naomi. It's that kind of effect. With Barnabas, and that's the thing, Victoria didn't live in 1795. Here's Barnabas when we meet Barnabas again in 1795, and later when we go back, we know that Barnabas has lived through that timeline. We know Barnabas, he's sort of your first time traveler. He's from the past, he's come to the future. Now, so when he goes back to another time, and the first time he goes back isn't even 1897, it's 1796, where he saves Victoria from being hung. Well, Angelique puts her in a coma. And we get the burn witch burn. He knows what's supposed to happen and what order it's supposed to happen in. He's not relying on a book. He's not looking at the Collins family history book. Oh, this is accurate. This is accurate. No, he knows what's supposed to happen because he's already lived the experience. But as Julia warns him about Nathan Forbes, what if Nathan Forbes hits you this time, but he's accurate? She puts that thought in his mind. And that's why he goes completely invisible and ends up choking him and biting him. So he's lived certain events so he can anticipate them. Now with 1897, the difference is, number one, he didn't will himself back in time. They used the I Ching one. So there's a difference there. Number two, he has not lived in this timeline. He's chained up in his coffin. So he's getting released in 1897 by some gypsies, which I love Thayer David Costin. Sorry.
It's a very dignified costume. I hope to be wearing it again soon.
It is. It's really good. And so he's let out by Sandor, and he knows certain things that are going to happen, and he's trying to prevent certain things from happening. He's trying to find out all about Quentin that he can. But Quentin is not quite the ghost. Quentin isn't the ghost he's experiencing in the present. This is a very flamboyant character he's encountering. This isn't the silent, stalwart ghost that he's experienced in the present. So I think I hope I've explained the differences.
Yeah. Well, here's kind of what I would argue, and I don't think either one of us is wrong. It's just a difference of perspective. When you look at time travel and Dark Shadows, there's always an intentionality for change, so that there's no accidental time travel.
Right.
There's no, okay, parallel time, you could argue, yeah, that's accidental because it just pops up. But I would also argue that with Barnabas, it may just be that with him, because he took a long way to get to the present, he intentionally went back to the past and he inserted his brain, his mind entered his 1897 body. Just like when he went back to 1840, he turned from, oh, screw you, I'm a vampire, to, oh, hey, Julia, let's kick George Styles' ass. And I think probably for him, it's probably more like, it's probably very silent, like, oh, okay, Edward kind of reminds me of Roger, but also kind of reminds me of Joshua, or Carl kind of looks a little bit like Willie, except he's, Willie is a paragon of dignity compared to this guy. So I don't think it's the dramatic, oh, everyone, I think the audience by this point kind of gets it, that when you go back in time, they look alike. So you don't need to call it out every single time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. What's you guys' favorite scene from this episode?
Well, for me, it's definitely the confrontation between Petofi and Quentin.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I'd say that Barnabas, Quentin, as Petofi and Quentin's body confrontation is really good, because it's the way Fred plays it. I don't know how it was written. If it was supposed to be like Barnabas was a bit should have been trepidatious, but he wasn't. He, you could tell that like Fred was playing it like at some point, he knew that Quentin was Petofi, and he's not. This isn't like, and even when I mean, the fact that Selby actually manages to get the Petofi voice rhythms perfect. He doesn't do the accent, he doesn't do the impersonation, but the intonation is perfect. He gets the hand there, and I just love the fact that Barnabas is just standing there like, okay, come at me, bro. Okay, you want to do the vampire thing? Okay, come on, come on. The only thing good about you, Petofi, is that you got a decent pair of mutton chops, and they're not even your own. Do it. And he tries to do the modern, the Vulcan mind meld on him, and it doesn't work. And Petofi's like, what? But the later scene with Thayer David and Catherine, I love the fact that Thayer David keeps a low tone. He doesn't even try to do like Selby. He just, he puts his hands as, you reveal the truth about yourself. Don't hold back. And it works. And I think you've got that great, the Barnabas scene is like, okay, you're expecting a big blow up and it doesn't happen. But that final scene with Quentin in Petofi's body, you expect it to be kind of minimal, and it's explosive. And I love the dynamics of that.
Before I give my favorite scene, I think it was what Thayer David does so well is with playing, supposedly being, Quentin in Petofi's body, which I love, because the fact that both actors have to sell that is amazing, and they both do a great job. When I viewed the episode again a couple times today, I noticed something that I saw earlier that David Selby did. When David Selby, as Quentin, finds out his son dies, he's very sort of sad and somber. With Thayer David's, being Quentin in Petofi's body, he's sort of coming across in a similar way, but not in a depression way, mind you, but in a way of he knows he's in the wrong body and he wants his own body back. And I love the way Thayer David is playing it. It feels like you're hearing and seeing Quentin through Petofi's voice. It's really well done. Mm-hmm. My favorite scene, my favorite scene is the dance sequence, the music video.
I know it.
I enjoyed that. I mean, anytime you can have a little musical number in Dark Shadows, it's just something so fun.
Yeah, and plus you can tell like the director was thinking, the director had a blast, and I'm sure like the guys in the booth were like, "Oh, hey, we figured out if we turn this really hard and press this button, we can do this. Let's do that." But I also think Dark Shadows, because I remember a couple of sequences from the Dream Curse story, and the Shadows. I think they did a version of Shadows of the Night, early Shadows of, Shadows. Is it Shadows of the Night, the Quentin's theme thing?
It is. I don't recall it being sung prior to this.
I think there was. I know in one of the old Dark Shadows compilations, there's like it wasn't so much sung as it was like it was background music.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, Dark Shadows was really. You get the sense that Dark Shadows really leaned into that kind of surreal, like they knew how to pull that off. And the other thing, and I'm going to give a few minutes for this, Bob Colbert does not get enough credit as the writer of the background music. And Jewel, I am ashamed to scold you like this, but you should have more Bob Colbert conversation. Shame on you, Jewel. Shame on you.
Well, he also was a great game show host, theme writer.
Right. Well, the great thing about Colbert's music is that it's both it's very atmospheric. It can be used to be either creepy or positive depending on the situation, and most importantly, you can hum it. He's the only composer I can think of that compares to Colbert in terms of this kind of genre. Would be Dudley Simpson for Doctor Who. The problem is Dudley Simpson, you can't hum a single thing of his tunes because it's all mood music, whereas Colbert has both the mood but also melody.
Yeah, I think Colbert, his score is very, very good. I mean, really, really great. And one of the most underrated sort of sound effects and with scores that I love that doesn't get talked about enough is how he really turned it up for Night of Dark Shadows for the movie. I like House of Dark Shadows has a good score too, but I really love what he did with Night of Dark Shadows. It felt like such a much more creepier movie with that music.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, considering how little he had to work with, I mean, those are very lean instrumentals that he's given. He doesn't. It's not an embarrassment of riches in terms of all of that, and so given that, I think he does an extraordinary job.
The one thing I always wanted him to score that he never did, and I wish he would have did one. I wish he would have got to score a Halloween movie, because I would have loved to hear what he would have done with it. There's been many people who have scored Halloween, just unfortunately not Bob Colbert.
I'm a Supertrain man. He did the music to Supertrain and it worked. When are we going to see Dan Curtis, master of Supertrain? That's when it got good.
And the fan film writers go crazy. So fanfic writers are out there. If you make a fan film, go for it. Just Dan Curtis, master of Supertrain. There's your creative prompt. Go.
That's a mockumentary waiting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
here you get someone with maybe get Eric Bogosian as like your celebrity and have him show his teeth out. And why not?
If you guys could have had Bob Colbert score for another franchise, what would it have been, Gordon?
Oh, that is a good question. I think I'm going to go a little off the beaten path. I'd have him score Farscape.
Yeah.
Because one, it's science fiction, and two, it's just plain weird. And Jim Henson did all the creature design, so I think Colbert would have really gone to town on that show.
Interesting. I probably would have had him do Dune.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's very good at big sweeping sounds, especially after a full muffalata at the Napoleon Inn in New Orleans. But also, he's very good at romantic music and thoughtful music. And so, honestly, and I know this is going to sound like a cliche, but I consider it to be the real acid test of composers in this sort of situation. Schindler's List.
Yeah.
You know, that is such an unbelievably powerful score, and it really, and maybe AI will give us a sample of this sooner rather than later. It could very well be that it is a great platform to try out different composers and see how they would do. It's just a thought.
Do you guys have a top 3 movie scores of all time?
Maybe. That's interesting. Gordon, what about you?
Let me think. I don't know if I have 3, but let me. I know one that comes to mind is The Untouchables by Ennio Morricone.
It's marvelous. Yeah.
Let's see what else. I'm trying to. I'm just trying to think because I'm thinking I want to go for soundtrack, but that. I'll say this, even though technically it's more a soundtrack than a score. Purple Rain by Prince.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think somebody else did the actual like orchestral score. Prince just wrote all the songs. It was his film. And let's see. Again, and a third one, and there's a mix of instrumentals and songs, but the soundtrack to Shaft from 1972.
That's a very strong range. I don't know, Jewel, what about you?
Number 3, the movie The Dead Zone. Michael Kamen scores it really, really good. The opening to it, just creepy. Really fits the mood of the film from start to finish. All I could hear is that theme as Christopher Walken is having visions as John Smith. Number 2 is easy. It's Ennio Morricone, but for Once Upon a Time in the West, not the other. And number 1, it's slam dunk. John Carpenter, Halloween, 1978. Mm-hmm. My God,
those are all good choices. What are our criteria now, Jewel? What was the question specifically? What did you ask?
Okay, give me your top 3 scores. It could be for movies, it could be for TV if you want it to be.
Do you mean the ones I like the best, or the ones that I think are the greatest?
Either or, like what the ones you like the best.
Okay, I need somebody to give me a ruling on this. Gordon, can you weigh in on, should this be my favorite, or should this be what I consider to be the greatest?
I would say, what are your favorite? Because like for me, the 3 that I chose were ones that worked both within the film and as independent listening. Yeah. So like I could put on, I have the soundtrack to The Untouchables. I can use that as background music. Purple Rain is a great album. Although if you wanted to claim that it's more of a soundtrack than it is a score, I wouldn't argue with you. And I think that Shaft also works because it's the songs, the instrumentals, and the actual songs all work as part of the movie, but they also work independently. So I would say use your 3 favorite, because the 3 greatest is a separate kind of, that's one you could have more arguments on.
Okay, sure. Okay, so 3 favorite scores, because I'm a big fan of movie music. It's really tough to narrow it down to 3, but I would say 3 that have been significant for me, that I've listened to a lot. I would say The Natural by Randy Newman. I would say Empire of the Sun by John Williams. And I can't think of the composer of this last one. He was the big guy before Michael. He was the big new guy before Michael Giacchino. Hang on. This was David Arnold, and his score to Independence Day. Especially when I was in graduate school, and I had to write a 171-page master's thesis in about 5 days. And those scores kind of on rotation kind of got me through it. I would say with James Horner's Glory thrown in for good measure. But I also have to say, I'm sorry, Jewel. I also have to say the score to Vertigo is also I think a masterpiece. So those are ones. Yeah.
Yeah. The score to Silent Hill is just pant-shitting terrifying. Yeah. Anyway,
scary music is a real art.
It is. Now, if you want to see like pure music, like to be the best like music video for horror or in general, it is Michael Jackson's Thriller. Straight up. So.
Wait a minute. Not that I've seen much of the competition, but I have to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I have to ask you both a question. From the moment, really, of that video, which was the first time I had heard Michael Jackson speak, I thought, this guy sounds really creepy. There's no way that this voice should be coming out of this individual. And it felt like it felt like not only was it a parody of being innocent, but it felt like almost a mocking parody of being innocent. Like this is something that this is the way he would pretend to talk around victims, before he lowers his voice and then goes in for some horrible activity. And I just thought, God, Michael Jackson, what a creep. And the whole career, I thought, what, he's got a monkey in a hyperbaric chamber and all this other stuff, and everyone else just giving him he's so talented. Well, it's like, you know what? There are a lot of talented people out there. He's not that talented. He's no James Brown. Why? How did culture give him this hall pass to be so weird when, he makes Andy Kaufman look like Andy Rooney in the normality department. I got a lot of issues with Michael Jackson. I just had to get them out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also doesn't help that the video was directed by John Landis, who has issues of his own. All I'll say is never trust him around helicopters, and I'll leave that there.
Hey, now Vic Morrow was finally made a member of the Rotary Club. So
you know what?
That's hard.
Google John Landis and helicopters. But yeah, Landis, especially after that, kind of went into like similar goofy stuff, and it doesn't help that. And one of the worst things he did was he sired the infamous Max Landis. I'll just leave that there. Y'all can Google it yourself.
Max Landis? I don't know him.
Okay, Max Landis he's a screenwriter. So he wrote, I think it's Chronicle. It's one of these. Basically, it's three teenagers go. They find a spaceship. They develop superpowers. One goes kind of nuts. He wrote a movie called American Ultra, which is about Jesse Eisenberg as a.
Wait, the girl with no expression in it.
Yes.
Okay.
He also wrote I, Frankenstein with Aaron Eckhart as Frankenstein, like fighting monsters. And, I love Aaron Eckhart, but you know what? That's not the guy you hire to play Frankenstein.
Oh, that was a bad movie. That was very boring.
Yeah. And Max Landis is known more for his obnoxious behavior and being like, oh, look at me, ho, ho, ho. And as well as some of his very questionable behavior towards women. And I don't want to turn this into that kind of podcast.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Not that this excuses it at all. Nothing excuses that sort of thing. But does any of this surprise anyone if prefaced with the words from the man who gave you Animal House? I mean, if that's being portrayed as youthful normalcy around the house, the kid's going to wind up weird.
Yeah, and I think, and Max came around in 85, so all the Twilight Zone stuff had already happened. And Landis, spoiler folks, Landis was let off the hook.
Well, what comes around goes around. Anyway.
Yeah.
You don't like that one?
But back to Dark Shadows, episode 873.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, it's
it was a
wonderful.
real
It's
good choice.
Chef's kiss.
I know you say it was at random, but it was a really good choice. Now, Jewel, baby, we got a hell of a week coming up, or 2 weeks, or however long you want to stretch this out.
Okay, well, are you guys good for tomorrow?
I am.
And
I'm good.
Okay, before I pick my episode, how does next week look? Are we?
My week is clear.
Okay.
Let me look at my calendar because, next week we do have a holiday. So.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that, Jewel.
Okay. Well, after.
Yeah, so it looks like I'm pretty good, pretty much all week next week.
Okay, so all week next week we'll do milestone episodes. You guys had wanted to do that. Is that good?
It's a mix. Wait till you watch them. It just, I don't know if they meant to have big episodes for the milestones, but there are some real winners.
Yeah. So I picked a really interesting episode for tomorrow night at 11 p.m. guys. Episode 202, which is really good. 202. Yes. So it's right before Barnabas, but it gives the intonation that Barnabas is a coming. So at least in the introduction. Also, we get some Jason McGuire, some Willie Loomis, good stuff. But let me before we go, because I'm going to stop recording, because I'm going to talk to you guys after I stop recording. Link to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be in the description box. Link to the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound is going to be in the description box. First of all, gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience, and thank you so much for doing this with me. This is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.